All right, it does seem like we're finally streaming live. I hope you can hear the audio and see the video. Stefan Maillet here with you, addedsouls.com, the website. A bit of technical difficulties on our stream this AM. Bringing in a friend of ours, a brother named Norm Fields, and he's going to be joining me for a topical conversation today. And we're just trying to mess around with the audios and the videos and everything going on. And there's a lot more that I need to learn, obviously. So I'll have to take a bit more time with that and get it operational to the visual that I'm seeking to have streamed to all of you good people out there. So thanks for your patience. I'm a bit late, about 20 minutes. I've been trying to find my settings and all that kind of good stuff, and just can't get to it. So I'm going to bring in our brother Norm here with us and see how that works. This is new to me as well. I'm utilizing the Ecamm software and bringing in guests, and so I got to learn these things. I've watched a few tutorials, of course, but my retention mind doesn't quite operate as well as it used to. So let me see here if I bring in our brother, see if that'll work here. Yep. And let's see if I can unmute his mic.
There we go.
You on? All right. Yeah.
I'm
I think
here.
you're here. You're here. Good stuff.
Good to
Excellent.
be with you this morning, Stephen.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you, brother. And I was very encouraged to know that you wanted to, or you were willing to, when I requested your presence with me as we share some information with friends. And we're just organically speaking about various things on Thursdays. It's a topical discussion, of course, and we can pluck out all sorts of topics that we want to have a conversation about. And out there, you viewers, by all means, send us suggestions of things you may want to have discussed as a topical discussion on Thursdays, and we'll put it in the queue, and we will certainly address it at the right time. So, Brother Norm, by all means, go ahead and introduce yourself, plug in your channels, the work you're doing, anything you'd like to say, and then we'll get into the conversation at hand, which is, of course, Christianity. Why should we choose Christianity? Is Christianity the better religion? I mean, there's 4,000 religions out there, right? Why Christianity? That kind of
Right.
stuff. So, by all means, go ahead, Brother Norm.
Well, you can find me on just about any of the social media platforms at the handle you see on the screen at Preacher Norm. I do a podcast on Monday evenings called Bible Q&A, where you ask the questions and the Bible gives the answers. And I have a locals channel where I'm publishing my study notes at normsnotes.locals.com, and you can keep up with me. That's my preferred social media outlet. I kind of share from there to everywhere else because social media is kind of a dumpster fire. So
Yeah, yeah.
with locals, it's you pretty much own your own social media platform and have total control over it. So I would love for you to come follow me at normsnotes.locals.com.
Sure. Yeah, Locals has been good and kind to myself as well. I got a community there, and I mean it's slow going because you know how it is, brother, man. Folks, we tend to be so comfortable with the major platforms, Facebook and Twitter and
Right.
YouTube. Although I am kind of pleased that Twitter took a change. They repented of
Yeah.
sorts, they've changed
Yeah.
their minds there. But Locals is a wonderful place, and it allows us to govern the information without heavy-handed censorship. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
I've been streaming more on X now, formerly the artist formerly known as Twitter.
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
but I've been doing more live streaming on X lately.
Hmm.
I don't think that it is quite there yet for an actual video platform, but
Yep.
it seems to be getting there.
It's getting
Um,
there. There's some work to be done, no doubt. But yeah, I'm with you. There's some potential, anyways.
but Facebook, YouTube, that's really the only other ones I use. I'm not on what's the other ones?
Well,
Snapchat or
Snapchat, Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah, that's I think that's where everybody's at. Instagram, right? That
Yeah,
I just
Instagram.
I never have. I guess I'm too old and crotchety for Instagram. I don't know.
We're a dying breed, man. We're cut from an old cloth. I do I finally connected Instagram to like my Added Souls Facebook page, and somehow the Meta universe, right, is doing what it does, and it shares things where I don't
Right,
know. I don't understand the science of it. I
right.
just try to produce the content. But
Yeah.
I never got on TikTok, which is of course this big thing. I know it reaches people there as well, and we have a lot of brethren utilizing that venue for the gospel. Also,
Hmm.
me, I don't know, man. I just didn't. I still remember how TikTok was being advertised on the Facebook newsfeed. So from the very get go, I was turned off by it because it advertised itself. I mean, I remember the initial launch of TikTok on the Facebook newsfeed. It was like 19, 20, early 20-year-old ladies, pretty much showing their cleavage, and that was the attraction. Like,
Maybe early 20s. I think
yeah,
it came out. A lot of them were underage teenagers
oh
that
yeah,
were shouldn't have been allowed to
to
do
do
that. But
right.
yeah, TikTok. Have you ever seen the difference between the Chinese TikTok feed and the American TikTok feed? Have you
No,
ever
but
seen that? Because
no,
it's
I
a
have not.
Chinese company, right?
Right. Well, yes, but I have not seen
So
the difference, though. I have an assumption on what
yeah,
could be the difference there.
if you see the TikTok feed that pumps out to social media users in China,
Right.
it's all femininity, proper femininity and proper masculinity for the men, being gung ho masculine men and
You got it.
feminine women, and then you look at the feed that gets pumped out in America, and
Yep.
it's all trans this and the LGBTQ alphabet people agenda stuff, and it's pretty obvious that it's purposeful. It's a military psyop.
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I mean, 20 years ago, thinking this way would have had us with foil hats and everything, waiting for the
Right?
aliens to
Yeah.
land. But today, it's
Right.
it's so that there's credibility to what you're saying and what we're sharing here. You can act like in our country, this fallen nation, formerly
Mm-hmm.
known as Canada, now known as China, sadly, but it
China.
has a
Is that right? Is that a thing? Is that people call
well,
it China?
us us citizens and patriots know that that's where it's gone, but it's
Wow.
not officially been, said, if you will. It's kind of like we, the citizenry, know what's taking place, and our governing agencies, have actually released information proving, without a shadow of a doubt, in a court of law, if you will, a tribunal of sorts, that we've been infiltrated and manipulated, and our public organizations are now under the operational of a foreign threat.
Right.
So
We have a lot of that here. Some of our congressmen and high elected officials have been caught in pretty sleazy relationships with Chinese spies, and
yeah,
it's bad. And
it is bad, and there is
it's encouraging that some of our governors have stepped up here lately and said that Chinese companies, which are essentially government agencies because it's a communist country,
yes,
that Chinese companies are not allowed to own land in these states, and
right.
that's a good development in the right direction, I think.
It is, and there is some hopeful, how should I say, some hopeful actions taking place also in this country. The fact that now the stories have been the accounts, the recorded accounts and journalistic integrities of the more so conservative grassroots side of things have been producing this, and on Twitter now you can actually see the evidence that
Right,
has been taking place behind closed doors that the mainstream media, of course, is not allowed to or authorized
right.
to show. We've you know we've been seeing a change in the citizenry becoming awakened, not woke, but awakened to the
Right. Yeah,
truth and
there's a
reality.
difference, right?
There is a big difference, absolutely. But you know what? These conversations are wonderful for like our Friday session, for the socio-political conversation on the Friday.
Right,
But
right. Okay.
Back to the function of our theme today in a topical fashion would be Christianity. Is it
Mhm.
truly the better religion? And Christianity, of course, is not just an academic pursuit where you have the knowledge in your mind. It's actually a faith-driven a religion where we live it as a lifestyle. And that generates our faith to have conversations about the things we were just having about, invasions and invaders
Mhm.
and foreign threats and TikTok and what that means and whatnot. But I was thinking because of the massive ocean of religious views out there. I mean, there's so many of them, right, brother? I
Mhm.
mean, you see them all over the place here, and you see the shift. I've seen the shift. We've gone from what was used to be understood as a Christian, quote unquote, nation with Christian principles, that kind of dynamic, male, female, husband, wife, get married, they have careers, they have little babies, they
Mhm.
have the joy of a house. Let's get a house. That was the Canadian dream, the American dream. You just get to
Right.
live in that prosperity. But we've seen that shift now. Now it's a loss of that identity, if you will, and we see in our province, in our country now, the boom of Islam. The Muslim population is just has expanded to a great amount, and also the
Mhm.
Sikh religion, if you will, Hinduism, and all these various others. And I just did a quick Google search, and it shows that there's like over 4,000 religious views, and out of those 4,000, you have branches from them, deviations and differences and whatnot. So you have, yourself probably a great 60,000 something various views out
Mhm.
there. In my past life, I'd obviously entertained various religious views,
Right.
hedonism or heathen or Hindu, not Hindu, but hedonistic, if you will, or
Right.
pagan. Life is in everything, the moon, the stars, and all that kind of stuff. And um, I just, we're trying to figure out the model and what we can see, I guess, from history and nations that adapted Christian principles or Christian Judeo principles compared to what the pagan worldview would be. And I think where we're ultimately going to land, I'm thinking, is in Acts chapter 17, of course, with this kind of conversation. But man, just go ahead, spill the beans with it. What's your thoughts? What's in your mind in regards to Christianity in the ocean of other religious views? And do you see a difference? Why would there be a difference? If
Mhm.
I'm a pagan listening to this channel right now, and I have a different worldview than we do, what's the allure? What's the purpose? What's the attraction?
Well, I've asked that question several times in presenting lessons, just to throw the question out. Uh, if we woke up tomorrow and Islam didn't exist, Islam was just gone from the earth, what would we lose versus what would we gain?
Mm,
I asked the same thing about Christianity. If we woke up tomorrow and everyone in the world had the Christian worldview, the Christian ideology, what would that look like? How would that affect the world? And the two different ideologies. You look at the one, and it's conquest by violence, um, convert or die. If the infidel has to pay special taxes to be able to live and live as a live a subservient lifestyle to the adherents of Islam, if infidels are even allowed to live. That's the one. And uh, a lot of times when you put that out there, people will go to the Quran and they'll say, "Well, what about these passages talking about being at peace and religious tolerance?" And what people
right.
don't understand about the Quran is pretty much the same thing with the Bible too, right?
Yeah.
But with the Quran, later passages supersede earlier passages. And when you look in the early writings of Islam, Muhammad, early writings, when his movement was in the minority, and he wrote a lot about tolerance and peacefulness, and because he was in the minority. But
Sure.
as soon as Islam reached a minority, wherever Islam has been in the world,
Right.
anywhere it has been in the world, when it has reached a minority status, that tolerance and peacefulness goes out the window real quick, and now it's conquest. Now it's, convert or die. And
When
so
they
those
reach the
later,
majority.
right, when they reach a majority level, right.
Yeah.
And so, that should be very alarming to us when we see the rise of Islam in Western culture, especially, which, historically, and using, Christian ideology in kind of a loose, broad way, not pure New Testament Christianity that as you and I practice,
Sure.
but just, Christian thinking, or
Yes.
what we might say, biblically minded.
Moral attributes with it. The
Right,
more so the
right, right.
moral side of it.
Christian morality or
Yeah.
biblical morality, right?
Right.
Western culture founded on that,
Hmm.
flourishing, the arts flourishing in Western culture. Everything from visual arts to architecture to government systems, and
Right.
everything, personal freedoms, and um, the flourishing of that in a culture that had as its foundation Christian ideology or biblical morality.
Sure.
Um, Whereas Islam, anytime Islam gets in the majority, what's one of the first things they do? They start, eradicating everything else,
Yeah.
and practicing this convert or die um, uh, thrust. So, what would it look like if tomorrow we woke up and everyone in the world, for example, thought of others ahead of themselves, the needs of others ahead of themselves, as Paul says in Philippians, that think not of yourselves, but the of others first, right? What if
Sure.
we woke up tomorrow and everyone in the world just naturally did that,
Right.
or do to others as you would have them do to you, right? We call it the golden rule.
Yeah.
Do to others as you would have them do to you, um, uh, and seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness.
Right.
Uh, um,
Love
all of
love your
these.
enemies. Pray for them. That's quite different.
Right,
That's quite
right.
a
That's quite
different.
different. So,
Yeah.
what would, if everybody in the world, if we woke up tomorrow and everybody in the world thought that way?
Sure.
Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself.
Hmm.
Right. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Put the cares of others ahead of your own cares. Right. If everybody thought that way,
Yep.
what would disappear from the world like that instantly? Right? Would there be wars? No, nobody would be going to war with each other. Nobody would be stealing from each other.
Right.
Nobody would be, looking for ways to connive and to. So, just on those very surface elements, right?
Yeah.
Those kind of um, broad principles of Christianity. That's why we call it the golden rule, because it covers everything. When I
Sure.
was in business school, one of the books we had for business ethics was a book by John Maxwell, that there is no such thing as business ethics, and it was all the whole. It was just a little tiny book. It was completely based on the golden rule: do to
Right.
others as you would have them do to you. And the whole thrust of the book is, if you do that in business, your business will flourish, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you just do honest business, if you do business with people the way that you would want them to do business with you, people will value your business, right? So,
Absolutely.
all of these things, the self-seeking, hedonistic pursuits that divide and destroy and cause so much strife, all of that would just disappear.
Yeah.
Well, what other religion? I compared it with Islam, which is the most striking, contrast between I'm going to conquer you and enslave you, to,
Sure.
I want you to prosper, just as much as I want myself to prosper, right? Those
Right.
are those are drastically different ideologies, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
but really, when we compare Christianity to any of the other religions,
Hmm.
it's just superior in the viewpoint that it has of others, right? It's
Yeah,
not all self-centered and it's not all about me, right? Buddhism, and we talk about, Buddhism is so peaceful and calm, and you don't kill anything because of reincarnation, which is a lie, and all these things. But it's very self-centered. It's all about me. It's all about looking within. And Christianity is not self-centered. Christianity is, caring for other people.
a very selfless religion.
Very selfless, right? That's what makes it superior. That's why cultures that have been based in biblical morality have flourished, because that's
Sure.
the way God designed us to live.
Yes, sir. Yeah. If we take the time to kind of just look at these models, and we have the evidence of history behind us, looking at a
Hmm.
retro model, we have history proving the point. Why
Right.
is it that Canadians or Americans are not moving in droves or migration in droves to the Middle East? The only thing we're doing in the Middle East is to go to war. Why is that?
Right.
Like,
That's right.
it's a simple question. Like, why is that? Why is it known that in the Middle East, which is mostly Islamic, it's
Mhm.
war and death if it's governed by a book, the Quran, which is about peace? Like, there seems to be. Is it true that there are some Christians who have the name but do not behave according to the ways of Christ? Well, yeah.
Sure.
Is it true that there are some who adhere to the name of the Islamic religion as a Muslim but do not participate in the instructions of Muhammad? Absolutely. If you find yourself with a peaceful Muslim, it is what would be considered an infidel, or not infidel, perhaps
Liberal, a liberal.
a liberal. And they are not well seen. Why? Because they are not functioning according to the strict commandments of Muhammad.
Right.
And what if you happen to find a Christian who is participating in lewd behavior or sinful activities, lawlessness? Well, he's obviously not following the instructions of the Christ. And
Right.
when you have that boiling over in a community, you
And
can
you can
see,
always find those examples, right? In any
yeah,
system, you can find those
yeah,
examples that a person claims to be an adherent to that system,
yeah.
but they don't follow the dictates of that system.
Yeah, Jesus told me to walk into a shopping mall and just mow down everyone with a machete or something. Well, oh, look at religion, look at Christianity, what's doing. Well, let's
Right.
hold on there for a minute. Let's take a breath here. Is he really doing what Jesus told him to do? Well, anybody who's
Right.
had any kind of surface reading of the New Testament system is going to know, no, this man may call himself a Christian. He may have said he's murdering in the name of Christ. I mean, we've heard our leaders
Hmm.
go behind the pulpit in front of all the citizenry of the country and say, Jesus wants us to perform abortions because it's health care and it's good for women.
Yeah,
So
isn't that disgusting? That and you're right. All of these different self-centered, self-seeking
yeah,
expressions of immorality.
yeah,
Somebody wants to try to say, well, that's Christianity, but we have a book that is the written, confirmed manual for Christianity, and if you can't find what you're talking about in there, it's not Christianity,
it's
period.
not. And there has to be that ruler. There has to be a system of measurement there, because
Right.
if not, and here's where I go quite often, and my audience have heard me say this many times. If there is not a foundation, a location we can go for an authority, a rule, then we become gods. We make ourselves to be gods. And therein, what you were speaking about, brother, regarding this self-absorbed mind. Because if there is no God, specifically the God of the Bible, then who's going to be our God? And there's always a
Me.
corrupt man
That's
to
right.
come and say, I'll be the God. I'll be
Right.
God today. I'll be Pharaoh. Huh? I'll be
Right.
Pharaoh. Sure. I
Well,
mean, there's no greater power.
in the absence of a true view of God, we seek to make ourselves God. And so
Absolutely.
what that comes down to is what you're talking about, is that the strongest person that thinks that they're God, that can dominate other people, they're the ones that get to be the God,
and
basically.
and the Bible itself, by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, rebuke and condemn the diatrophic individual that would even infiltrate a congregation with that
Exactly.
preeminence.
Exactly right.
that tyranny. So with the Christian religion, you have a system. We can go to the Bible. It's an instruct. I mean, if you're going to tell me you've built a house, I
Hmm.
mean, I'm gonna pull up the blueprint and I'm gonna look at the measurements and be like, dude, you didn't build this house. Like I
Right.
hired you as a contractor to build the house according to the very specific details of this draft, this drawing. You didn't. Well, I built a house, didn't I? Yeah, but the house is not the one that was according.
Right.
The police officer
Not
doesn't say
according to the
stop.
plan. It's not
Yeah,
my house.
this
Right.
is my house. Exactly. And you're not going to find a police officer saying stop because I feel like I want you to stop. Hey,
Right.
hey, hey, stop, stop. Why? I feel like I need to tell you to stop. No, what is he going to say? Stop in the name of the law.
Right. By the authority of,
By
I
the
have the authority of the law to make you stop.
right. So
And
Christianity,
and can show you that in legal code.
absolutely. Because I mean, as a citizenry, and you see it, you can go down that YouTube rabbit hole where you find citizens who are actually well versed in the law telling the officer,
Mhm.
dude, you don't have the law with you on this one,
Right. That's right.
right?
And
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 vice
that's a
versa.
problem too. I mean, anytime you're functioning in a structured system and you're functioning outside that structure, that's a problem. And so
That's a
that's
problem.
those videos you're talking about with the police. I think some of those people, instigate that on purpose,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
uh,
And I'm not for that at all.
no.
To be clear.
But um, you know, when we talk about the superiority of Christianity and any objective observer, honest observer,
Yeah.
comparing the different religious systems,
Yeah.
anyone who's actually being honest about it, I'm not saying anything offensive when I say that Christianity is superior.
Right.
It is the superior system of life,
Yeah.
the superior guide for how to live your life,
Yeah.
and anybody who investigates it objectively is going to come to that conclusion. The
Sure.
problem is that the investigations aren't honest a lot of times
Yeah.
because we have this kind of multicultural mindset that we've been trained in since the early 60s that says that all cultures are equal when they're not. It's
They're
like
not.
saying all opinions are equal. Well, no, they're
They're
not.
not.
And
They're
so,
not.
uh,
Strength and
yeah,
diversity.
right. Yeah. What does that even mean? Strength and diversity.
It's a slogan and it's
So
worked.
the more differences introduce into something makes it stronger. No, I think that's what's called crumbling and making it weaker.
Crumbling,
But
dismantling.
anyway, people will talk about stuff like the Crusades, and they'll say, "Well, look at the Christian terrorism
Right.
of the Crusades and how they went and converted people at the point of the sword." I've even got one of my history books of church history recounts one of the generals in the Crusades marching a bunch of Moors out into the ocean at sword point and commanding them to be baptized at sword point,
Right.
or be killed. That was their choice. You either be baptized or we'll kill you.
Do or
Uh,
die.
and and the person that wrote the book, it's by a denominational writer. The person that wrote the book says, "Praise God, so many Moors were converted to Christ." No, they weren't.
No, they weren't.
That's not how you convert people to Christ.
That's not
Uh,
how it works at all.
but
Yeah.
but looking at the Crusades, was that Christianity? No, that wasn't
No,
Christianity.
of
You
course
look
not.
at the Christian system in the Bible. What did Jesus say? My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my disciples fight.
That's
Well,
it.
the the way that the kingdom of God is spread is not by military conquest.
No.
And now you can talk about the socio-political advantages or what's the how should I say it uh, rightness of the Crusades and the necessity of the Crusades on a political level, on a governmental level,
Sure.
but that's never how God intended for
No.
the spiritual kingdom to spread, and so it wasn't an expression of Christianity.
No.
It was the Catholic Church, the apostate church that had corrupted Christianity.
Sure.
Um, So, when people compare the different religions, they look at things like that and they latch on to things like that, or things like the Jim Jones, cult leaders
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
kill a bunch of people, or have a bunch of
Drink the
people commit
Kool-Aid.
suicide in the name of religion. They look at stuff like that and they say, "Well, oh yeah, there's your Christianity." No, that's not
No,
Christianity.
it just isn't.
That's just like every other religious system where there's people in that claim to be part of that religious system that aren't.
Yeah, that's very true indeed. And it's a matter of one's heart, number one, to seek out the truth of it. And sadly, we're just such an apathetic citizenry. We're being fed by the public powers, corporations, academic institutions, media, whether it be entertainment or cable networks, news, this, that, and the other. All these major powers, government powers, and they're all speaking the same tongue. They're all speaking the same propaganda, which is, this strength and diversity, this coexistence, this, that, and the other. And so it's kind of dumbed down our thoughts to seek out the truth of it all. And so we just accept what's being thrown our way. If we model Christianity in its purest form, according to the system of the New Testament, and even not even to its purest form, but to its surface value, which is a moral
Mhm.
code in the community, both those models have proven themselves to be quite superior than any other model. And you
Right.
can find yourself in a nest of atheists. If they are practicing the values of Christian principles, they're going to flourish in business, they're going to flourish in their community, but yet they don't
Right.
believe in God. Now, the sad part of it is many of these exist, and they just don't thank God for what is, the beauty and blessings that they receive because they act upon the principles of the scriptures. And you can look at
Mhm.
any kind of heathen religion or pagan worldview, and all of them always, in model historically, result in murder. It's the
Mhm.
end result. And people
That's right.
they think I'm jumping the gun here, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. See, we've dismantled the best religion our nations had. America was founded on the identity of independence because of a higher power. Canada, though oppressed by the monarchy system, yet still in much freedom because our modeled founding fathers and the documents chartered rights were based upon a higher power. And we've
Right.
dismantled that now. We've took that away. That's old, that's archaic, that's racist, that's whatever you want to call it, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
blah. So
Right.
now we've
Yeah. Our,
adapted.
our, our founding document starts out. We are endowed by our creator with these inalienable rights, right?
Yeah, and they were
And so,
very
yeah, they're
specific with
they're
that.
they're based in biblical morality, and that's what I was
Sure,
talking about with the flourishing of Western culture.
you got
Based
it.
in biblical morality, so that where was slavery eradicated? Now there's more slavery in the world now than there ever has been before,
Hmm.
but what cultures have uh, eradicated slavery from their political systems, we might say.
Yeah,
It's the Western cultures that are based in biblical morality.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason people were migrating in droves to
Right.
come and taste of this land of milk and honey. It's not because the beauty of creation is not found in war-torn countries. You can find mountains and rivers and
Hmm.
skies and beautiful sunsets and all kinds around the world in any given location. God's beauty in creation, intelligence, power, might is found everywhere. But where there has been a rejection and or a what do you call that now when you neglecting and rejecting of the Christ, specifically in our dispensation of time, the Messianic age, it's just the end result is death. They're like, oh, you think you're a prophet? I'm not a prophet. I can just read the signs. Oh, so is it
Right.
miraculous? No, it's not. It's written right there on the wall. It's been
Right.
written for a while.
Yeah.
If we
Well,
remove
see, I have
Christ,
this book that says I have this book that says if you do these things, this is what's going to happen. And guess what? If you do those things, that's what happens.
it's
You
what
don't have to be a
happens.
prophet.
On our Wednesday sessions, I began yesterday our Wednesday session in the book of Exodus. We had finished Genesis, and now we're in Exodus chapter 1 and verses 1 through to I think we did 13 or 14. It's it it captivated me with
Mhm.
great interest because of how similar of a historical model that we see in repetition. When the new king of Egypt came in, he didn't want to know anything about the previous historical records with Joseph and the
Right.
cooperation that was taking place with God's people and the pagans, how they were able to mutually benefit in a system that was operational, kept them away from dying of starvation. And you kind of see the mind of this new king. And you see, of course, the cowardice of a great many people of God and believers and how that meshes into, well, suffering, hard labor,
Hmm.
slavery at the hands of this God complex, this egotistical maniac who's this sociopathic narcissist, all these things. And it's the same thing. I was reading it and I'm like, this could have been written yesterday for us today. Like, it's just right there. This is the model of the system. And the beauty of Christianity, as you mentioned, is the spiritual sense of it. You and I know that we have been called, of course, to be good stewards of our physical existence, meaning you're just not
Right.
going to go jump off a bridge today. That wouldn't be Christ-like. That wouldn't be producing for Christ at all. Oh, I want to go to heaven, so I'm going to jump off a bridge. No, that's
Hmm.
priority is spiritual. Absolutely, no doubt. What is spiritual nourishment is always more appetizing than physical nourishment. You can go to hell with a full belly, but I'd much rather walk into heaven on an empty stomach. So we
Right.
understand that. However, that does not void us of the consequence and the stewardship we must abide by on this earth. So which religious worldview are we going to take for that fulfillment, that stewardship? Someone says atheism. Oh, that can't be the case. Atheism tells us there's no law to tell you and I that murder is wrong. So that obviously can be thrown out of an honorable court of law, and there's no defense for it. You should be an atheist. Why? I don't know, because we're a bunch of animals. Okay, next. Well, in comes Hinduism. Hinduism will tap you into all the many gods, Vishnu and Hishnu and all of it, and you'll learn peace and this, that, and the other. Yeah, but what does it function? What's its law? Where does it come from?
Right.
What does it
Where's the
provide?
practicality of it
Where's
that
the practicality?
influences my daily life and how to live a productive, successful, fulfilling life? Where is that?
Where is that? And I've looked at these things, as I know you have as well, in our
Hmm.
past life in a genuine way, like I just want to know. I want to see what is available out there in the ocean of religious buffet, if you will, and pick and choose what seems to work. And at all fronts, Christianity always shines. The Christ
It's
always
the
shines.
superior system. That's
It's a
right.
superior system. It's practical. And to a bit more of the emotional side of it, it's such a fulfilling joy. It's such a
Hmm.
fulfilling peace, a
Right.
structure of healing and forgiveness and loving one another. It's just for the
I
life of me.
can I throw in a verse real quick? I said the other
Please
day that
do.
if I was ever going to get a tattoo, which isn't likely that I'll ever get a tattoo, but if I did,
Yeah.
it would be Colossians 1:16 because it says everything in that one verse. It says everything that we are and that we're supposed to be right there in that one verse. For
Sure.
by him all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. Here it is. All things were created through him and what? For him.
Sure.
So the Bible is going to tell me how to fulfill the purpose of my creation. To I was created by him, and in this passage, him is Christ, right? John 1 1 through 3 says that the Word created everything, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So here, Paul says that Christ created all things for what? For him. So the only way for me to fulfill the purpose of my creation, of my being, of what God created me to be, the only way for me to fulfill that is to live for Christ. And so if I'm living to the very purpose of my creation, how could there be a more fulfilling way to live than that?
That's it.
A more fruitful way to live than that, than to live the way that God created me to live. He created me to live for him. And if I'm
Yes.
not living for him, I'm like a broken piece of machinery that can't function according to the what it was made to do.
Absolutely. It doesn't hold any value. You can't find yourself being content and joyful with an eternal peace because there's always a void. I have, sadly, a great many of my past friends that have passed on to go meet the Maker, if you will, and have
Mm.
judgment. And most of them, their pursuit was almost in a Solomon type worldview. Maybe it's materialistic
Right.
belongings. Maybe I need to get a whole bunch of stuff. That'll make me happy. That's the purpose for life. And then they go on
Yeah.
that journey for a decade or
Right.
two, and they're like, man, that doesn't fulfill what I thought it would. How about women? I love women. Let's get women. So they get this harem of women and
Right.
fornication and all this kind of stuff. That gets old real quick. Nah, that ain't it. Well, maybe it's career. Maybe I need to find myself a strong career, and then they do that and they go through all the motion and sadly did depart this earth, lonely, never married, never having the beauty of children, never understanding the true depth and the purpose
Right.
of living a Christ-driven life. And I wept,
Right.
I wept for them. I still weep for them. I'm like, man,
Mhm.
if you would have just known, and if folks would just tap in
Mhm.
to true, pure Christianity.
And I've heard you talk about that before, and from hearing you talk about it, I haven't. I've alluded to it. I haven't talked about it as explicitly as you have, but sounds like we come from pretty similar backgrounds, and uh, I was trying everything to find fulfillment, just like you said, that Solomon path of wine, women, and every expression of hedonism he could try to find fulfillment in. Well, we've been there and done that,
Sure,
and
sure,
uh, uh, praise God, we came to the same conclusion that Solomon did before it was too late.
right,
That this is where fulfillment is. It's to serve God and keep His commandments, and
yeah,
and that's where real fulfillment is. And I know. I had gotten to a point to where, and I've described it sometimes before, as being at the bottom of the barrel, and the only way to get lower is to knock a hole and keep digging.
right,
And and it was either uh, change or die kind of thing.
yeah,
And um, all these other religious systems that I had dabbled with just took me further and further into the darkness with less and less fulfillment, less and less satisfaction for the way I was living. But it
hmm,
was when I turned to the Bible and when I turned to Christ
yeah,
and saw that this is the right way.
yeah.
This is what I was created to do,
That's
and
it.
that's what blew all the rest of it away, and got me on the right track.
Sure,
Um, I,
absolutely.
I had criticized the Bible all of my rebellious youth, and pointed to the denominational divisions, and I still remember the pain on my mother's face when I said, look at all this division, all these different churches that teach all these different things, and they all claim to follow the same book. Why would I want to read that book that causes so much division? And
Yep,
just how ignorant I was. And it just, it broke her heart. Like I said, I can still see the pain on her face when I said it. But
certainly.
then when I was, in the ditch and was looking for a way out of the ditch, I started reading the Bible for myself. And it was, really quick after I started reading that, all these things that people are arguing about and divided up over, and they're not in the Bible. These people
That's
are
it.
divided up over things that aren't even in the Bible.
That's
And
it.
um, and that was kind of the uh,
Kind of a
beginning
turning
of
for you.
the right, absolutely. And that of course led to my conversion and my mother's restoration, and things have been a whole nother world since then. But um, we look at the content of the different religious systems,
Yeah.
and even just an objective analysis of the content and what it teaches,
Right.
the ideology. Christianity comes out as superior, but
Yeah.
it's not just the examining of the content of it. It's that The Bible is the only religious book in existence, the only one that you can actually prove is of divine origin. and
That's it.
and so we would expect that the content of it is always correct, because we can prove that it actually is from God, that these are the things that God said. And so, we would expect them to be the right way to do things when we
Absolutely.
understand that it is of divine origin.
Absolutely. It's designed that way. It's
Mhm.
structured to help us out of that ditch, out of that bad place. And it's such a peaceful, again, understanding of it. If folks would just sit down and start reading in the Gospel of Matthew, just turn off
Mhm.
all the smartphones and all the distractions of the world and just read it for yourself. You don't need to run to your reverend, your priest, your pastor, your this, that, and
Right.
the other. You don't need to go on YouTube and have too many chefs in the kitchen. They'll cook you up a mess. You won't be satisfied. For your own independent faith and mind, like we've had to do, because we can all look at a great many churches and Christians living crazy lives, hypocrites,
Right.
self-righteous hypocrites, a whole lot of them. And you can be like, well, I'm not going to go to the gym today. There's fat people there. Well, that don't sound right to me. That
Right.
don't make sense. Now, I thought it was an argument for a long time, but once I finally just sat down, broken and just this moment of, man, what's the purpose of life? I've tried everything else. So you sit down and you start reading the Gospel of Matthew. There are some tedious moments. There are some verses you're going to scratch your head being, I have no idea what that means, but it's going to start working on you. Certain verses are going to penetrate your thoughts and it's going to start to make a lot of sense. And you're going to start to recognize a message that takes you away from what you've been living, which is death. And it's going to start
Right.
to transition you over to a message of life. And it's just so powerful. It changes lives. It gives you another breath of wind for another chapter in your history. It's truly the superior religious worldview. And we've not gone into some kind of deep scholarly insight regarding all religious worldviews, though that might be a podcast to come in the future where we dive deep into each intricate religious worldview. But Christianity just stands so bold, and it's a religion that must be received freely. It's never enforced on you, and because of that, you can start to see the love of Christ in it. If I'm force feeding you this book, if my children were coming to church because if they don't, they're going to catch a beating, they're never going to know what Jesus is all about. They need to know why we're going to church, because of the love of
Right.
Christ.
Right.
Some will say, if I don't go, Mom will beat me over the side of the head. And I'm telling you, I'm not saying I'm against discipline. We all, of course, there are times where the child might be starting to have a bit of a rebellious way. You're like, no, we're going to church. Like, obviously,
Right.
that has a moment. But if that's the only thing the child understands is, if I don't go, I'm going to get in trouble with Mom. And though that might be an initial motivational
Right.
tool, one must see that we're going there for a man named Jesus. And that
Mhm.
does not exist to go and see Buddha, to go and see Muhammad, to go and see Vishnu, to go and see whoever. It just doesn't give you that fulfillment. And some say, well, I found great fulfillment in modern science or modern religious meditation, and I do yoga. I'm not against yoga. I do this, that, and the other. Yeah, okay, let's say you found a inner peace, a fulfillment in life. Your life is going great. Your relationship, your marriage is great. You're financially stable, got beautiful children, peaches and cream under this modern religion. And some do. Ultimately, you're not going to live forever. It's an unget-overable, objective absolute. You're going to die. We're all going to die. What about after?
Nobody gets out alive.
Nobody gets out of here alive. Now, you don't need to die twice, as the scriptures would so reveal,
Right.
but we all have to go once with that sting. What about then? Well, no, see, what you've clung to is not going to have any power to transition you to eternal life. And ultimately, that's where it goes. Because I've sat down with people who are wealthy. They got everything they want. It's a beautiful family. It's a beautiful life. Why on earth would I need Christianity? Because ultimately, you're going to die. And there's only one way into the next realm peacefully, and that's through Christ.
Mm-hmm.
If I may, and we got about 10 minutes here, in Acts chapter 16, Acts chapter 17 is a location where I find great peace in seeing, of course, the interaction of Paul as he stood in the midst of the Areopagus there, and said, "Men of Athens," verse 22, "I observe that you are very religious in all respects." And I love how he's honorable, right? He's not like this
Mm-hmm.
belligerent, heavy-handed, "I'm smart, you're all stupid, and I'm going to condemn all
Right.
of you to hell" kind of stuff.
Right.
He says, "For while I was passing through and examining the objects of your worship, I also found an altar with this inscription." And it says, I quote, "To an unknown God. Therefore, what you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you." And what's fascinating, of course, is the language is not seen in the same, if you will, descriptive reception as we would today. If today you go to someone and say, "Well, that's quite ignorant," they're going to take a fit. They're going to throw a fit. They think you're
Right.
calling them stupid. What Paul is saying, of course, is you've not been educated in this here God, this unknown God. Let me elaborate on this unknown God to
Right.
help you
If
educate you.
if I call you ignorant, I'm not insulting you. I'm just saying you don't know. But
That's
man,
it.
people, you tell somebody they're ignorant of something, and
Oh, dude.
you're not getting very far after that.
Yeah, I'm very ignorant of how to fly a plane. I've never flown a plane. I've been a passenger on a plane, but if you were to give me the location to sit down there and fly the plane, I'd be like, dude, I'm quite ignorant. I don't
Right.
know. So he
Right.
says, "This I proclaim to you," in verse 24, "the God who made the world and all things in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands." And we're so accustomed, the Jews of the first century, right? The Jews of the first century were waiting on the Messiah. Why? Because he's going to pull up a sword, slay down the Roman power, and erect a physical kingdom with a physical location to restore physical Israel. And to their credit, that's all they had ever known in the Old Testament anyways. It's a physical blessing, a physical ancestry and protection, security. Well, here, of course, in the Christian age is the spiritual kingdom. Now it's a spiritual house that can be seen through physical vessels assembled together. So it's not this nebulous, "Well, I'm a Christian and I can float around anywhere in the world." No, you're actually bound to submission to your local assembly where the spiritual house is congregated in a physical way. So
Right.
the
Right.
God who made the world, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all people life and breath and all things, and so on and so on, the account goes. But that's a beautiful part because you mentioned a bit of that. It's like all other religious views, they seem to, well, they don't seem, they command service to their end. They want your blood.
Right.
They want your blood. Only the Christ gave his to you. They
Right.
want yours for them.
I was going to jump in there where he says in verse 25, "Nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything." And
Right.
it never ceases to amaze me how some brethren present themselves as though God needs them
Oh,
to,
man.
that they are it's like you brought up a little while ago the Diotrephes, that how lucky God is to have me, like the Pharisee that prayed in the temple. God, aren't you lucky? I'm yours.
Oh, man.
God, no, God doesn't need me. I need God. And
Absolutely.
the way that I express my need, my love and devotion to God, is to do whatever I can to serve him,
Yeah.
not because he needs me, but because I need him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's, this work that I labor alongside with here over on the East Coast, the East Coast Church of Christ. And I am plugging that in for all of you out there. If you don't know about the East Coast Church of Christ, please check out our .com, eastcoastchurchofchrist.com. You can also find our Facebook page, East Coast Church of Christ. It's been such a healthy and beautiful, flourishing congregation, very healthy. And what changed? What's taking place? Why is we got out of the way? We became servants. We were
Right.
humbled.
Right.
We found out that God don't need me. Oh, well, the church won't grow here if I'm not here. Baloney. It just takes the gospel of our Lord and Master, his providence,
Right.
our prayer, our submission to him. And I think
It
you were,
takes humble servants doing whatever they can to serve other people,
yeah,
because just like I need God, they need God too.
you got it. We all need his grace.
It's humble service to other people in
Absolutely.
service to God.
And that makes us equal. Like, no one here thinks that I'm the head pastor and this is my church.
Right. Right.
I've not diatrophically taken preeminence. I took over. No. We were added. We were cultivated by God. We need God. So all of us work. So that's why we have numerous repeat visitors. That's why we've been having baptisms upon baptisms and renewals and Bible studies, because we've just humbled ourselves. God did that. And if that's a system that is only governed and instructed by the Christian mind, it's
Right.
the system of Christianity that brings about that understanding, because we know we're not saved by the law. We're saved by the lawmaker. And because we're saved by the lawmaker, we follow the law. And within that realm of mercy and grace, we find great peace, healing, and it takes away that aggression, that anxiety. It takes away from the stumble of the world. And in today's fallen nation, both in America and in Canada, the first step to sobriety is admitting we have a problem, right? Well, the first steps to renewing or bringing our nations to its former glories is to say, they're fallen. It's a mess. You can't call us Christian nations anymore. We legally butcher babies by the numbers. We cannot call ourselves Christian nations. Well, if we...
I pray for the day that society looks back at this time, and just like we look back at history, and we have terms like the Dark Ages, and that future generations will look back at this time as the age of insanity, because we
Oh,
do
man.
so many insane things that just don't make any sense.
No sense.
That's another topic of discussion, I know, but the spiritual warfare, the things that are so prevalent in our culture today, that just make no sense at all. How do you make any sense out of the choices people are making, putting implants in their
Oh,
skin to make them look like demons, and splitting their tongue and dyeing their eyes and tattooing all these demonic symbols and things on them, and
they don't
just
even
going
know which gender
further.
they are. They can't
Right,
even
right.
differentiate between male and female.
And then you have governors, congressmen, senators that are saying, no, it's perfectly fine for doctors to mutilate children and
Yeah.
to give them medications that will alter them for the rest of they'll never be able to have a normal life at all. And you just, you think, how does that make any sense at all? Well, the only way to make any sense of it is that there is a demonic spiritual influence at work that makes people, leads people down a chain of choices that just gets darker and darker and darker, and weirder and queerer and queerer, until you're so far removed from any semblance of sanity that nothing makes sense at all. And
It's
it's the age of insanity. I don't know
it,
how else to term it.
man, you're spot on. It's flesh-driven secular insanity. It makes well, and this would be a good session for us to have on a Friday for our socio-political conversations. But now they're tabling laws that are going to have us punished for having plastic products in the house. So they're going to take inventory of how much plastic we have in our houses so that they can tax us on our plastic in the house. But yet we're butchering babies every other hour. The insanity of it all. It's a flesh-driven insanity, and it is indeed persuaded eloquently. Oh, it's very charming, by the powers of a lie or of a myth, which, of course, the truth of the Scripture sets us free from.
The delusions.
The delusion of it. Where do we stand in? What's the solution? It's always been the same. It's Jesus Christ. Jesus
Mm.
Christ can snatch us away from that oppression. And in such a time as crazy as we live in, what a wonderful thing that we get to shine. We get to say, hey,
That's right.
I have a solution, because I'm out there in the community all the time. And I speak to people, and it's the same thing. We can't afford to eat. We can't afford to pay the rent. We can't afford to pay the mortgage. I lost the house. I'm losing everything. I've lost my career. I got life is hard. Okay, where does that come from? What's the solution? I think that's why the East Coast Church of Christ has been such a location of refuge for many souls seeking the truth. They're like, we've reached a point where there needs to be a location of refuge and forgiveness for the nonsense we see out there. And if anything, also a location of validation for people out there who may not be Christians yet, but will listen to what you and I are saying and saying, that's it. That's
You're
it.
right. Yeah,
I
that's
remember
right.
that's what I'm looking for. That makes sense to me. And
And
yeah,
I think a big part of the problem is that we live in a time in the West anyway. We live in a time where Christianity has been, quote, easy.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
in a manner of speaking, there's, we in America, especially, for you know hundreds of years now, we've lived in an environment of, quote, religious freedom, where there's no challenge, there's no uh, sacrifice really to living the Christian life, and it has created kind of this, hobby viewpoint of Christianity. People don't see the necessity of it in their life because it's easy, because
yeah,
their job is not at risk because they're a Christian, or
right.
their social clubs are not at risk because they're a Christian. Where, in other places, I've preached for congregations where the members of the congregation got locked out of their houses for a week, and the police wouldn't do anything to get them back in their houses, because they were the Church of Christ in that village
Yeah,
of Hindus and Muslims.
right.
We just don't face things like that. So I'm afraid that a lot of Western Christians have kind of a hobbyist mentality to their Christianity.
Sure.
That they do their things that they do, Monday through Saturday, and then, Sunday they do the Christian thing, right? They go to
Right.
church, they put on their nice clothes, and, well, now, not even maybe put on their nice clothes so much
Yeah,
anymore,
even that's gone out the
but
door.
I'm afraid that we're coming to a time where there is going to be some serious persecution. We just saw it with the past few years, with shutting down the assemblies,
Oh
and,
yeah.
with the threat of law. I know you guys really had a lot of
Oh
trouble with that
yeah.
uh, up north, and um, is it going to motivate us to really rediscover the necessity of the Christian life in our life, uh, of the practicality of it,
Mhm.
and the tenacity that we're supposed to have for it?
Sure.
Because if we don't, someone's going to take it away from us,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
uh, so, you know, any objective observation comes away Christianity is superior. But there has to be the recognition of the necessity of it. Well, yeah, I see Christianity as superior, but this is my tradition and this is what I'm going to stick with. And no,
Right.
there's a necessity for it. This is
Yeah.
the one that is necessary. The rest
Yeah.
of them are made up. This is the one that is genuine, is real, is the necessary one that
That's
that
it.
you have to follow if you would make it to heaven.
Absolutely. There's no it has to become genuine in one's heart, and
Right.
you are true in what you are saying. And I've lived stateside 3-4 years, and I've
Mhm.
gotten the blessing and opportunity to visit a great many local congregations and experience the ups and downs of faith, if you will, stateside. And I've also done the same in this country. And yeah, sadly, there has been a great fall of that passion, and folks have just
Mhm.
gotten into a routine, and they got bored of the routine, so they've begun to progress, liberalize their minds to a outside of Scripture
Right.
scope that has a never-ending. It just never ends, right? Once you
Right.
pursue something,
That's where the innovations come from. We need
yeah,
to spruce it up. We need to liven it up. And
yeah,
well, why? Because you've lost the zeal, the passion. As you know, we see the fulfillment of that scripture in Christ, that he was eaten up with zeal for his Father's house, so
sure,
that he would not tolerate innovations,
right.
corruptions taking place in his Father's house. That's the kind of zeal we need. That we will not tolerate these kinds of innovations and corruptions of the most beautiful revelation ever given to man, the only divine revelation ever given to man. And then you want to come along and say that it needs to be spruced up and livened
Yeah.
up? No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. We don't need to renovate God's house. God painted he
That's
built his
right.
house the way he was supposed intended. You know,
That's right.
with the East Coast congregation here, I mean, we congregate, assemble together as the body of Christ in an old basement. You know, it's a bit stuffy. It has all kinds of mechanical stuff making noise. It's not the most charming thing, but yet the hearts of the people are governed properly. And that is not to say that this year we're going to reach 40, 50 members and say, hey, let's build a bigger
Right.
house where we can, you know,
Right. But
uh,
the people that come and struggle together through those growth pains, they come for no other reason. They're not coming for a fancy building or for
right,
fulfilling programs or quote
right.
fulfilling programs. They're not coming for any of those things. They're coming because they love God and they love each other, and that's the only reason to come. If you're coming for another reason, then you're not really there anyway.
You're going to miss the mark. And you bring up a good point. I've had several brethren, most that I don't know, and I know that, well, okay, they're reaching out to me. They're sending me emails, they're sending me private messages. And I know they're doing so sincerely, or I'm going to assume
Mm.
they're doing so sincerely. What are you doing? What's the magic formula? What's the programs are you involved in?
Right,
Like,
right, right.
why am I seeing you in a congregation where your people are being immersed into Christ and they're staying? Why am I seeing like so many visitors return? Like, what's the magic formula? What's the code? I want to break the code, you know, because I want to do that here. And it always throws them back, and they think I'm being high-minded or perhaps stuck up about it or something, but I'm not. I'm just, hear me out. I know this is a crazy thought. Hear me out. I open the book, we open the book together, and I read in an expository manner from one verse to the next, so we stay within the
Amen.
immediate context of the chapter, and we just learning who Jesus is. And I don't have this like fever every time I sit down with our visitors or our study contacts or with the congregation. I don't
Right.
have this fervor to, everybody needs to get wet today or you're all going to burn in hell. I
Right.
just give folks
Yeah.
the
You cul
time.
you cul you cultivate a genuine love for Christ, and that cultivates a genuine love for each other.
That's it.
And that's a body of people that you can't force to stay away from each other.
Exactly.
There's nothing you can do to those people to force them to stay away from each other.
We will
No,
not
we're
be
we're
pried apart.
we're going to come together with the Lord, with each other to glorify God. We're
That's
going to
it.
do that, and there's nothing you can do to stop us.
Nothing whatsoever. It's going to be done. You can't pry us apart. When you build on the true power of the gospel and the understanding of the love that is found therein for one another, being kind to one another, each member here is so selfless and kind, thoughtful, always. We're connected every hour of every day, even though we have to separate to our secular works and we have to go do this and that and
Right.
whatnots. We have this structure, and it's amazing to me, Norm. um, Once God showed us this model, like He took us away from very toxic people, toxic sources that were just so evil, and He brought us to be such a healthy people. It's only once we saw a healthy congregation that we fell down weeping to God and thanking Him for having saved our souls, because It's like the woman who's always going to the next boyfriend who's a toxic person, beating up on her physically, mentally, all these things. And then she finds a man who is a genuine, upright man with integrity who loves her and takes care of her. We've been shown the model of what the church is supposed to look like,
Right.
what the church is, how the church is supposed to operate like. And that's given us the discernment to look at many others and be like, man, that's bad. That was bad. Like, that was not good. Like, that was not healthy. That was bad. We should have removed those delinquents. We should have done something.
That's
We should
right.
have. So it's a wisdom that comes at a high cost, because it comes with sorrow and deep grief. But once the smoke clears and you're on your knees, humbled, begging God for answers, the book opens and he says, here's why. You see it now? And we're like, we can't see it any other way now. I will
Right.
never.
I mean, some struggles are hard to get through, but on the other side, like you said, you look back and you say, I'm glad we went through it, because look where we are now.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. It's a beautiful thing. And Christianity is, of course, the only model, the only religious belief that can give you this eternal hope, this eternal peace, this refuge, this forgiveness. And we'll have to wrap it up. And we're about an hour and 10 into it, and it's been a wonderful session. I truly appreciate you, brother, a great deal. I do hope we get to do this as often as we can on Thursdays and whenever else. But friends watching, all of you, you've been a great encouragement to us. I see some comments floating by. I'll be reading those afterwards and replying to them accordingly. Again, just a wonderful topic and conversation. Norm, is there something you want to close us off with?
Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it, and anytime, just let me know. I'll be happy to jump on. I'll try to be more timely and focused, and not as scattershot.
Oh, no, not at all. It was
In the
fine.
future. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I enjoy talking with people who are genuine in their faith, and
Sure.
I see that in you, that you are a genuine proclaimer of truth, and I appreciate you for that.
Well, thanks for that encouragement. I never know how to take those things. I appreciate that. And I feel the same way with you. And to all our viewers, thanks again. Please stay focused, stay positive. If you need anything and we can serve to that capacity, reach out to us. Of course, we have wonderful works that you can support. You can reach out to us and get involved with that if you want to have that kind of a conversation. I'm always willing to have a video chat, a phone conversation, email exchange, whatever is necessary can be done. So till next time, Lord willing, for us, tomorrow, of course, Friday, it's time for our socio-political conversation, and we'll have a lot more fun with current events and things like that. So if you are willing, 10 a.m. Atlantic Daylight Time, we'll be live tomorrow. Good stuff. Peace out.